What is your personal capital stack? How to manage, organize, and maintain your money. This is a video that can really easily get into the weeds. And as I was sitting there thinking about it, I was like, man, do I really want to do a video like this? I try to keep my videos not super duper long, but this is one that's easy to get in the weeds. But I think let's agree up front we're going to stay out of the weeds on this, because it's super easy to start getting into this and start talking about balance sheets and chart of accounts and all this different stuff that, quite frankly, goes way over people's head. And the minute you start using words like that, using accounting phrases, and start talking P&L and income statement and balance sheet and retained earnings and all this other stuff, people who have this aversion to anything accounting, you guys are going to turn this video off and you're not going to learn what you need to know. So why don't we agree up front that we're going to keep this video reasonably short, and we are also going to try to educate you a little bit in terms of what we're talking about when we're referring to a capital stack. Now, I'm not a purist. I sometimes reuse phrases that may be used elsewhere. I know capital stack in the context of real estate is often, the stack of capital to use and purchase real estate. So sometimes in the capital stack might be, all right, who gets paid in which order, right? So in other words, you've got this money that comes in, and it generally comes in from, maybe comes from a debt investor over here or an equity investor over here, in a mix of debt and equity investors. Well, who gets paid? When do they get paid? How do they get paid? Et cetera, et cetera. That's not what this is. I'm just looking at this from a basic perspective of how's your money? Like, how are you managing and maintaining your money? Now, let me press pause here just for a moment in recognizing Grant Cardone as something that he said that I think is actually right. Now, I will say this. I'm not a huge fan of Grant Cardone. So for those of you 10Xers out there, I'm not trying to be inflammatory. I think he has some good stuff when it comes to marketing. I think he's a brilliant marketer. I think that's where his brilliance stops. I think he's a horrible salesman. I think his punch you in the mouth style of sales, it's even bitten him in the butt, and he owned it on Undercover Billionaire. He'd been mentioning it a few different times. I actually went and binge watched the show. I think it was like a 7 or 8 hour binge. And he was way too aggressive with trying to buy the apartment building. He was way too aggressive with the folks in Pueblo, the business owners. And he had to walk that back. And there's just times where he was just too aggressive, and and it cost him. So I think but I do think he is a brilliant marketer. And one of the things that I thought that was a big takeaway from that show was when he said they gave him a vehicle, they gave him a cell phone, and they gave him $100. And he's like, I didn't even want the $100. He's like, because at that moment, I would be managing money, and I don't want to be managing money. I want to be going out and generating leads. I want to be going out. Again, he talks about this all the time. Contacts equals contracts. And man, I will tell you, I think he's spot on 1,000% on that one. I think he's 100% right. He is, when you've got that $100, okay, now he's always worrying about, trying to get a deal and trying to get, I spent $5, I spent $20, he wanted to go out and immediately make contacts with folks who really weren't interested in the money that he had, but interested in what he could bring to the table. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. So, and now the reason I'm bringing this up in a video around capital stack and organizing and managing and maintaining your money is I think that this can happen to excess. And I can tell you, I have an accounting background, but I don't like to spend a lot of my time, honing over my money and my numbers and, moving money over there so I can get, 0.1% better return and all this other stuff. Quite frankly, if I have enough leads coming in, I have more money coming in than I can actually handle. I have more attention, more leads, more in that particular case, I don't have to be good at selling because I have so many leads. In this particular case, that's I think where Grant Cardone doesn't really have to rely on being a good salesman because he's got so many leads that come in because he is really good at generating that lead generation or the generating the leads. So that is where I just want to make sure we press pause. Is this is something you can overdo. You can overdo the maintenance and management and organization of your money. So I know I had a coaching call with someone today who's in my inner circle, and they were, they had bought QuickBooks, never actually set it up, never actually did anything, never set up. I said, did you set up your chart of accounts? And they were like, I'm not even sure what that is. And I said, okay, listen, don't worry about any of that right now. This is something that you can easily do on a very simple spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheet. You could do it on a piece of paper. It really doesn't matter as long as you're actually tracking it. And what I mean by tracking it is, like, it's the difference between tracking something and just simply checking something. If I told you that the Dow Jones Industrial Average was at 20,000, right? That's only relevant compared to where it has been. If it was at 30,000 and you're like, oh my gosh, it's at 20,000, that's down a lot. If it was at 10,000 last time, you say like, oh my gosh, it's doubled in price, right? Or it's doubled in value. You'd say, yeah, so it's only relevant to where it's been. Where I want you to get into the habit of is actually tracking your numbers. So I do that on a monthly basis. So when I mean tracking, I mean specifically tracking. I track every balance that I have. Back when I had a bunch of credit card debt, I would track those balances month over month. I could go back multiple years and tell you what those balances were because it was all on one spreadsheet. So you could literally have on your one side literally all of your liabilities. You could have all of your credit card debt, your mortgage debt, and everything else. You could also have your assets in there, your cash, your real estate assets, your vehicles. I don't really track the value of the vehicles just because, to be quite honest with you, and I don't even put that on my balance sheet because my vehicles aren't worth very much. I mean, I drive a piece of crap right now because it's not in my personal vision to drive a big fancy vehicle that I drive literally 3 miles to my house and back to my office here. So that's not really part of my vision. But what is in my vision is to have all of my real estate assets paid in full. And then at that point, once that's paid in full, then we could start looking at maybe using and leveraging and using some cash to go build a house, go buy a vehicle that we want to drive and that sort of thing. But so I don't even put vehicles on there. You can do that if you want, but quite frankly, vehicle, as an asset, vehicle values change so much, it's almost not even worth it. But it's up to you. If you want to put them on there, that's totally fine. So I will update the valuations of my real estate about once a year, just because, and now lately over the last, several years, real estate valuations had gone up quite precipitously. And so I was updating them about every 6 months, but I don't want to get into a habit of updating real estate values month by month unless I really have empirical data that's going to say, hey, it's up, it's continuing to go up. But generally, I just leave that in there for about a year's time. So all I'm doing is I'm just tracking the values of these things. Specifically, what I'm tracking is the numerical values, the dollar values of my cash, the dollar values of my investments, and the dollar values of my debts. So month by month, I'm literally tracking these things, and I can tell you where they were last month and the month before that and the month before that and the year before that. And the reason I'm tracking it is because I can start to track the trend. So part of the reason why I want to track my cash is because I can tell you that most business owners don't have enough. And because most business owners don't have enough cash, it leaves them very vulnerable when bad luck events happen, and it leaves them vulnerable from not being able to take advantage of good luck events when they happen. When you're like, man, I wish I had the money to buy X, Y, or Z because it's such a good deal, right? It might be a piece of property. It might be a very well valued stock. It might be something else that you could take advantage of if you had the cash. So that's something that I see quite often. And I am very, very adamant about making sure that I have enough cash, even to the point of like, hey, man, if I have to delay paying something, I'm going to make sure I have more cash than that's generating every single month, because it doesn't. I'm going to make sure everybody gets paid. But my point is, I might wait until the very end of the pay period in order to pay that, just to make sure that my cash still continues to grow. So that's the sort of stuff that I track in terms of a capital stack, is just organizing that on a simple Excel spreadsheet, my assets, my liabilities, and that's pretty much it. I'm not really worried about anything else, but I am tracking that from month to month. I can tell you at the end of January what it was, and I generally do it at the end of the month. The end of January, that was my balance for 2023, 2022, 2021, however many years I actually have it. There was a couple of years I actually decided to delete the data, and now I'm kind of regretting it because I wish I knew where I came from way back in the day. But even just over the last couple of years, I've seen my net worth grow quite a bit because not only am I reducing my liabilities, but I'm also increasing the valuation of my assets. So that's basically it. I hope I didn't get in too much of the weeds, but if you'd like me to get in more of the weeds on something like this, I can pull up an Excel spreadsheet, kind of show you what that all is. But realistically, just track your numbers, and I mean track them. Don't, I mean specifically down to the penny, what was the balance at the end of each month, and then you'll start to see the trend, and hopefully you'll start to see your cash grow. Hopefully you'll start to see your liabilities diminish, and then you'll know you're heading in the right direction. All right, everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time.